Well, hey everybody. This week we looked at one of the more famous parables. In fact, as Rick talked about, it's the first parable that Matthew gives us that Jesus actually did that kind of sets the tone really for all the parables that will come to follow. There's really three S's that kind of summarize the main components of this parable of the sower, the seed, the soil, and the sower. What are each of those? The seed, as Rick told us, is the gospel going out, the good news about Jesus, how it goes out to the people. The soil, well, as you'll hear from the parable, I'm going to read it in just a second to remind you, there's a few different types of soil, and each of those matters as to how the hearer understands and accepts, so to speak, the seed, the gospel, how it takes root and so forth. And then the sower is Jesus, and then as he describes, he really gives it to us, the followers, the believers of Jesus, will be the next round, or so to speak, of those who are the farmers who are scattering their seed. And so let me read one more time, fairly quickly, but please listen in on the various types of soil specifically that the seed lands on. Here's the parable of Jesus in Matthew chapter 13. A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on the good soil where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Jesus then goes on a little bit later to describe what each of those soils meant, and I'm just going to quickly summarize and touch base on that. The seed sown along the path, Jesus goes on to say, is like when the seed, the gospel, goes out and the devil comes and snatches it before it even soaks into the ground. That seed, I'm going to speak a little bit in my youth ministry perspective here, especially because it comes to mind as I teach a lesson or hear other leaders do it. It just reminds me as we share the word, as we sow the seed, sometimes the devil snatches it up before it takes root. Sometimes the people, they come to church or they hear what you have to say perhaps on the street or at work about why the gospel is important to you, and they just kind of, yeah, that's not for me. I'm not really interested at this point in my life. And that's what's represented here in that type of soil that falls along or seed that falls along the path. And then the next seed is that rocky soil. There's as Jesus describes, on that rocky soil, there's a little bit of dirt. But if you've been along a path, maybe out west in Estes Park, or Colorado, or some other place like that, that's a bit more arid and rocky soil, there's not much there, but you do know that sometimes stuff comes up there, right? Grass or even weeds sometimes. And so here we see from Jesus that the seed lands, it takes root in that shallow soil, and at first it pops up, but then it kind of withers away. Sometimes as we share the good news of Jesus, these things happen, and young people at a youth group or maybe even you at an earlier point of your life, you heard it. It sounds interesting. It sounds like something you want to do, but then you kind of people just have moved on. A situation that comes to mind for me is districts. Districts is huge for our youth group, and many of you have even been there or sent your children there, and it's a high point moment for young people's path towards Jesus, I'll just say that. And over the course of the weekend, the students are excited about what they hear. They're singing worship songs together and learning new lessons and about what it looks like to have a walk with Christ. Some even accept Christ or ask Him in to their life. They make Him Lord of their life for the first time. But then they go home, and it reminds me of the Sunday effect, so to speak, of districts, of this awesome high, this joy that happened, and then they go home and just move on with life. And that's where this joy with no root takes place. And that's why discipleship is so important, and follow up with folks as they do come to know Jesus. As Rick talked about, that we believe, generally speaking at least, that this person is most likely saved. And many scholars feel that way. We could, as Rick said, there's discussion about that, so to speak. The third soil is the ones that land on the thorns, right? The seed lands, it takes root, but the thorns, the stuff of life, the worries about life, the pursuit of wealth, choke it out. Again, we can picture that happening pretty easily with our young people. We have various things from social media to athletics to future career to problems at home, all kinds of things. They choke out that joy that we felt at first as new believers. And so what we hope for there also, again, is follow-up. How do we follow up this gospel, that seed that landed on a new hearer, and they accept it, they want to do it, but the worries of life choke it out. And then we hear, of course, that final one where the seed lands on the crop, and the belief happens, and growth happens, and a crop is produced. Out of them becomes other believers who make believers in their discipleship process. And that's where the good soil comes into effect. Those are the things that we hope for, as Jesus describes. These are the ones who hear, and Matthew says understand, or they retain, and Luke even uses the word persevere. These are the ones that keep going in their faith. And so we have hope as we plant the seeds of the gospel, whether that be at Rooted, our young 4th and 5th grade ministry, or our Fusion ministry. We would ask that you would be praying for our young people specifically as I share this with you, or anyone, even those who are coming to church with us on Sunday mornings as well. If this is new information to them, the seeds of the gospel, that it would take root. So I would just covet your prayers over our young people. We've had wonderful turnouts again this year as we get going in the fall. We're a month and a half into our Fusion and Rooted years, and we've just seen so many kids, just like on Sundays, new people coming every single week. Please be praying for them, that the soil that the seed lands on would be good soil, and they'd want to know more, and that they'd want to share even what they know with others. So again, I hope that this parable is one that we can take great illustration and life application to, and live it out. Thanks for joining me today. We will see you this Sunday for Mission Sunday. Looking forward to hearing so much about what's going on in the work that we are partnering with our missionaries on. Until then, have a great week.